In this video, we're going to look at adjusting a tournament schedule for your own purposes. There is a forensics template that has been created as well as a debate template. And one thing that you may want to do, or when it comes to just any tournament you're copying over from a previous year, is making sure to adjust the times as you see fit. So looking at a tournament that I have about to take place here, if I go to settings and schedule, I can now adjust the times as I see fit. If I want to back it up, I certainly can. And I want to save my time slots. What's important to note when it comes to any kind of scheduling is you want to make sure any and all of your events have things checked here. What type it is. For most speech tournaments, it'll be preliminary rounds. If you're going to have a finals, you can simply indicate that by a final. If you're doing a debate tournament, it's going to be important to indicate if there are going to be rounds such as power pairings. So using another tournament that's public forum only, these are all prelim rounds, but if I am going to have out rounds, then I'm going to go ahead and put in high, 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 low. In a tournament mechanics video, it's going to go over some specifics on out rounds and power pairings. And unfortunately, tagroom.com does not necessarily do the best job with this, so you're going to have to do some manual pairings when it comes to that of power pairings at the least. Eliminations, finals should be fine, but it just never hurts to double check and make sure everything looks good before publishing anything. And that's how you adjust the schedule for your tournament. If you're wanting to adjust more than that, such as the dates, that should have been covered previously. But again, when it comes to the dates, you're going to want to go under tournament and click on dates to adjust the dates there. One thing to note about tournament end time, you want to set it somewhat quite later on than when you think it would actually end, so that way judges have time to finish ballots.
In this segment, we're going to explore doing room assignments. Now, the primary performance application being used is that of Zoom. So if you're using NSDA Campus, there may be a different video for that. But for this particular segment, we're going to look at room assignments using that of Zoom and also room creation. Going to our tournament, the first thing we want to look at specifically is how many rooms we're going to need. Looking at total head counts, we can see here how many entries there are particular to each event. In declamation, for example, there's only one entry, so that would only be one room. In dramatic interp, there's 11, which would necessitate 2 rooms. Depending on your tournament and what operating guidelines you're going by, there are some cases where you can get by with 1 room for 7 entries, like that of humorous interp. If, however, you're operating under a limit of 6 per room, this would need to be split into 2 rooms. For this particular tournament, 7 is the maximum we have going for each room. So in the case of impromptu, we would need 3 rooms since we have 21 entries. Extemp, we would need 3 rooms of 6 each. Now, most of these rooms are already created, but for the purposes of this segment, I'm going to also show you how to create some rooms as well. Going over to Sites and Rooms under Settings, we can see quite a few of these rooms have already been created from previous tournaments, such as Congress Chambers, Policy, and the like. Extemp, as we note here, only has 2 rooms. The A and the B is to indicate the section, which is going to be important when it comes to Zoom setup later. Same for impromptu. Impromptu only has 2 rooms as well. So to create rooms, we're going to simply go over to the Add New column. Once you've typed in the name for your new rooms, go to Save New Rooms. And we can check to make sure that they've actually been added. Now, using NSDA Campus will require a different video or a different segment to show how to put in URLs or the various steps for that, which would be over here. But for this, with Zoom, I'm going to pull up the information of our tournament, pulling up the specific link used to join, and start pasting in the entry URL for all the rooms that are going to be used. don't forget to click Save Room Changes. This way, competitors and judges will have a link to click on once the tournament gets underway. The next thing we're going to look at is that of room pools, since room pools are going to be a necessary component when it comes to creating the schematics and pairings for each event. A lot of the room pools have already been created here, but we want to check and make sure that each one has already been set up. In this case, there is no room set for declamation in the room pool, so we will simply click to add the particular room to it. Notice that deck rounds have already been assigned to it. This is a part of the tabroom.com tournament setup, which is a completely different set of segments and a different video. Going to DI, we simply click the 2 rooms that are indicated for DI. Going through this process, you will now have all the rooms set up for when it comes to continuing to set up your tournament and paneling each round. This would also be done when it comes to debate as well. If you would have to need 3 rooms for Congress with 3 chambers in the room pool for Congress, you would simply go ahead and select those as well.
This is where I need to configure NSDA campus before I can move forward. So here's where I need to try and predict how many rooms am I going to need and on what days am I going to need them. So if I think I'm going to need 40 rooms on Saturday, 8 rooms on Sunday, and 20 rooms on Friday, I would purchase 68 rooms. And if I do that, it's going to take me to an invoice and set everything up. You can add those later, so if you just need to have a site set up to get going, you could purchase a very small number of rooms and get started. For sites and rooms, again, that's going to be set up to my NSDA campus, so that will happen as part of your purchasing of rooms through NSDA campus. Normally, when you're hosting a tournament physically, this is where you can set up the rooms that you have available to you, but for this year's tournament, we don't need that.
In this video, as a part of your tournament setup, we're going to review various judge notes and things that may be particular for debate. Of course, this also applies for forensics when it comes to viewing judge notes. Looking at an upcoming tournament, if I go to that of entries and judges, in debate, I can see the various judge categories that exist. Speech may be just limited to that of one category, that of speech. Looking at Lincoln Douglas, I can see that there is a note here by this particular school's judge. Retired teacher coach may judge their own school. To make sure that this is going to be something that takes place when actually setting up the tournament, you may want to click on the name and view over here to the right to see whether or not they can judge their own entries. Coaches have the ability to indicate this when they are registering their judges, but some may neglect to do so. Since there is a particular note indicating this, I will go ahead and open up the fact that this is a neutral judge. Another thing particular to debate would be that of Lincoln Douglas judges, in that they can also judge public forum debate. This allows tabroom.com during the tournament process of setting up the different rounds to also pull an individual that is selected in this category as well. Going back to all judge LD judges, we can look at another to see whether or not they were also selected for public forum debate. Here we have a judge that was not indicated for public forum and so would not even be considered when it comes to setting up that round. While Lincoln Douglas judges may be used for public forum, the inverse is not necessarily true. Notes are important, especially when it comes to particular blocks. If there happens to be somebody that just recently transferred from another school or has experience coaching students at a different school, it would be helpful to note whether or not those particular judges should be judging those schools at all. So again, judge notes would be something to be reviewing before you schedule any rounds or set up anything in terms of pairing.
Now that the time for all changes have been made has passed, we're going to go ahead and look at, for the speech side of things, paneling all of our rounds. So you want to make sure that the timeline for judge additions or coaches to be able to drop students or change names has certainly elapsed. Otherwise, that could affect what it is you're going to work on. Also, as noted in another video, you want to have made sure you've checked judge notes for any and all pertinent information. Going to our tournament that's going to be taking place, we want to go ahead and set up all the rounds. Now, in another video, it talked about room setup, whether it be for NSDA campus or Zoom. So if all your rooms are set and have been pulled, we can go ahead and get ready to panel everything. One thing I'll just quickly note is that looking at the events, you may want to check the settings to see what number of judges are in this section. If it's blank, then it'll go with whatever you set up and what we're about to show you. Some of them may already be set ahead of time, however, with one, or in the case of some particular events, if you so desire, you could have it set up as 2. Now you could set it up individually through here, or you can set it up in what I'm about to show you. I know that in VHSL, they require 2 judges per section in most tournament options for speech. But depending on what you're running, you may want to have it set to 1 judge if you simply do not have enough judges to do 2 per. In all of these events, the judge per section is already set to 1, or it may be a blank, which is going to default to what we have here. So if we go to paneling rounds, panel all prelims, one thing we're going to do is look at the number of sections. We want to go for the smallest number of sections possible. So that way we can get the most. Now, some tournaments have a maximum of 6 per room, in which case you would not be able to do, say, poetry 2 sections of 7. Here we have a warning about any and all work that may have been done ahead of time in assigning rounds. Now that we have all of the competitors assigned, we'll panel the judges. We'll do 1 judge per panel for this example. It gives us a quick rundown of the panels and rooms, time slots, events divisions, maximum. We'll erase any existing assignments and valid scores, just in case there was anything in there. Normally, you would not have to type anything like this because it's your first time doing it. But for this example, I may be redoing one. 0 sections I couldn't find a judge for. That's fantastic. That's what we want. You have some options here if you want to check out for disasters. Everything should be fine. It says here there are no rooms, but that's easy to take care of, as I'll show you here in just a second. No double book judges. Everything has a panel. Let's go ahead and look at the schematic for an event. So we can see here the judge. There's only 1 competitor in this, so maybe let's use something different like impromptu. Here in impromptu, we have the competitors. Now, what's odd is that I know that we selected 3 sections to break this down into because we were allowing 7-4. So in this case, the program decided to do something that we didn't agree with. But that's okay, because we can certainly redo this. Auto section to 3, wiping existing. I am quite certain. Section. Much better. Notice, though, that it did wipe out our judges as well. So we'll just need to simply click this button here to auto-assign judges. Now, this would be the step-by-step if you wanted to do this for each and every individual event. What we did by paneling everything at once is take care of most of all the work. But as I'm showing you here, it never hurts to double check and make sure it's exactly how you wanted it. Also, don't forget that if you have more than one round, the chances are it made the issue here as well. So we'll go ahead and resection to 3. Now, if we go and look at something else, such as, say, poetry, here it gave us sections of 4, sections of 5, sections of 5. We could leave this as it is, or if we wanted to, we could redo it to put it into 2 rooms of 7. It's kind of up to you in terms of what size you're comfortable with, and also the amount of judges. As was noted earlier in this segment, there were enough judges for everything, so we could have left impromptu the way it was. But if I was determined to have it as being sections of 7 to make it so that it was equal rooms, I could redo it just as I showed you. Going on to the rooms are actually very easy to take care of if they're not going to be automatically sectioned. All you have to do is hit Auto Assign Room, and there it is. Don't forget that you would need to do this for both rounds. In this case, it's indicating there was an insufficient room because I only had one room for this particular event since I was looking to do a section of 7. So in this case, we'll go ahead and resection to 1 of 7. Now when I auto-assign that room, there's not an issue. Again, it's indicated here there's no judge, so I need to put in a judge. Going through the process here to assign rooms may seem tedious, but at the same time, it's rather beneficial just to make sure to double check that you have everything the way you want it. And again, when assigning rooms, don't forget that you have 2 rounds that need to be taken care of each time. If everything is said and done and you've gone through all the events and made sure you had everything the way you want with the rooms and the judges and the sections, the next thing we'll do in another segment is publish everything so that it may be seen. What we're going to look at in this segment is pairing rounds for debate. There's going to be a little bit of a combination in this because I do want to review room pooling as well, as that's going to be something that's important when it comes to actually setting up your tournament. So before we actually start pairing things, we just want to take a quick look at the head count. I'm going to look primarily at going ahead and taking care of Lincoln Douglas and public forum in this example. So we can see our numbers there. We want to go ahead and make sure we have all the rooms set up, which again is mentioned in another video. But with 12 for Lincoln Douglas, we already have codes put in. So we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We've got enough for Lincoln Douglas. For public forum, we only need 10, even though there's 21 entries. That means there'll be a bye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there's an 11th, which actually wouldn't be a bad thing to have on there, just simply because we're going to need some place in Zoom at least to stick those that have a bye. If you're using an NSDA campus, you don't have to worry about placing somewhere for a bye. All right, the next thing we want to take care of after we have taken care of making sure we have enough rooms is just to make sure our room pools are set, because that's going to be a part of setting up as well. So we can see that Lincoln Douglas has 12 in the pool, which is good. We have our rounds that are going to be taking place. Let's look at public forum. Oh, we don't have anything in the pool. So we want to go ahead and just go down and click through all of the PF rooms that we are going to use. I'm going to leave that last one off simply because that's where we're going to go ahead and put in the buys. Also, notice that there are only 2 rounds listed, so we do need to add in the 3rd round of public forum to be a part of this. And now we have it all set. So for round paneling and whatnot, and again, it never hurts to take a look at your judges to see if there's any particular judge notes, things to avoid, things of that nature. We go ahead and just take a look here and see there's no notes listed. Let's go ahead and look at
public forum as well. Oh, there is one here, so around 4 p.m. So we can indicate that, you know, we may want to see if we want to avoid having this person not doing the first round, but we can get to that in a second. Let's go and take a look at paneling. We want to do rounds. Well, we could do paneling of the rounds, or what we could do is we could just go through one at a time looking at Lincoln Douglas, because actually we don't want to do them all at once, well, because there are some judges that are going to be set up for both Lincoln Douglas and public forum, and we wouldn't want them to be put into public forum if we actually need them for Lincoln Douglas. So simply just going to auto pair gives us our settings for the first round. And then when it comes to the judges here, we have no judges or rooms, so we can just auto assign judges. We have our judges all in there, and it went ahead and took care of our rooms for us, so we didn't have to worry about paneling the rooms because they were already set. Now, if we need to switch out a judge, like in the case of this individual, I know they're not exactly available for the first round. So what I can do is for this one is, it's actually easier. I know I can click on the judge name and go through it for judges not judging. Also judges that are judging elsewhere. So folks, you know, that would have to be a multiple switch thing. I actually find it to be easier and better to look at the whole thing by clicking on the room, because then we can see the pairings, the setup. You know, it's helpful to be able to see what schools we have to make sure we're not going to have any issues there with that. I'm going to go ahead and put in this person from Monticello and drop this individual right there. And there we go. And that takes care of that of Lincoln Douglas debates. We don't have to really worry about anything there with Lincoln Douglas. So yeah, you just simply go through and continue to do the other rounds, that of round 2 and 3. You know, after you have everything there, what we want to look at is we just want the full schematic and to publish it. So that way everyone knows what's going on there for round 1. We want to make sure nothing is visible. So you can go through publishing here. You could also go through that of web publish if you wanted to, in which case you could do everything at once if you wanted to, mass publish, schematic, not public. You could also do this way as well for mass publication. You would just simply want to make sure you have your results not being seen. If you want them to see it as soon as it's done, that's fine. Otherwise, you can wait and mass publish the results after the tournament is over, which is covered in a separate video. But that's it. We've now pretty much gone over everything we need to know for paneling and setting up around. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to kind of go back and review judges just to make sure, because no system is perfect, and I have had experience where sometimes Tabroom does put a judge from a school with its own competitors in there, and so we have to be careful of that. Like, for instance, I can tell you right now, I recognize this. This is actually the coach for Fort Defiance. So for whatever reason, this is a good example to find, the system has put this individual in for this particular debate. And there's no real clear reason why it would do that. I mean, we could go look at the judge real quick to see if perhaps they had themselves as being able to judge their own folks. And see, it's not even selected. So there's really no reason why the system would do that. So it never hurts to double check, because otherwise you will get a lot of coaches calling out to you right away as to, hey, I'm judging my own kids. Why am I doing that? So in this case, we want to just do another quick switch. We'll go ahead and put in this individual here, add them in, drop Rock Barnes. We can see actually that's not going to work, because we have here indication that it is both Fort Defiance and a John Hanley. So we really don't want to do that. So in this case, we actually want to go back and do a double switch. We'll put a, let's see here. We can do the one that's already judging. So we put in one from Monticello. There it is. So we'll add that person in there. And that room's taken care of. But when we go back, we should see an empty judge spot. Yep. So it took the one from there, which we know we can't use the John Hanley person. However, we do know that Brock Barnes is available, and they're not from either of these schools. So we should be good to go now. So you got a little bit of an extra tutorial there in terms of switching judges around and what to look for, but these are all good things to be aware of when it comes to paneling a tournament.
Now that we've completely paneled or paired our rounds, the last thing to do before the tournament truly gets underway is to make sure that competitors and judges can see the rounds so that they can access them. By opening up the tournament that we've been using as our example, and there's not going to be a debate example of this because it's the same thing for both of them. Going under the paneling tab to web publish, we could either do this by individual event, one at a time, so that if you wanted to, you could have an event be seen ahead of time or prevent event from being seen. The options when going event by event is to publish the schematic, the results, secondary results, and the feedback. Now, I prefer not to have any of these selected until after all the rounds are completed, just as we would not be able to publish the results until all rounds are completed. To do all the events at one time, over here on the right, there's a mass publication option. We have it for all events, the schematics, but as I said, I don't want any of the results or feedback. Some tournaments have it so that way disclosures take place right away. As soon as judges enter the ballots, competitors may see the results. For VHSL, this would actually not be allowed whatsoever. So you want to make sure that none of these results are available. You'll need to come back after the conclusion of the last round to change this so that way people can read their ballots. But for now, we just want them to see their schematics. Hitting publish now means that all rounds have just been published for all events. If we go over and look at any event in particular, we'll now have a message at the top that wasn't there before. Our tournament starts in the future. So, competitors that log into tabroom.com right now will be able to see what room they're in for what round, and it will not have a link yet until the tournament actually gets started. Judges should have a link, even though it says they cannot, and the ballot may not be available, but they can get into the room if need be. If we wanted to see an example of this, we'll simply go down to Impromptu A, and look to add a judge. Specifically, we're going to add myself in as a judge. So first, before we add myself there, we need to add myself in as a judge here. Going back to Impromptu A, if I go back to my account, we can now see that I have this available. Here we have the room, the entries, the start time, and the ability to start the ballot. And thus, your tournament is ready to get underway.